Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ross Rosenberg. I am the author of The Human Magnet Syndrome and the creator of the Codependency Cure treatment program. Today I'm going to do a part 2 of a video that was recorded a few weeks ago in which I contrasted the impact of a narcissist's use of gaslighting and conditioning in order to control their prey, which are usually people who are self-love deficient, who have the disorder called self-love deficit disorder. And for the people that are new to my work, I renamed codependency using those terms. So in that video, I talked about how conditioning is used manipulatively, harmfully, malignantly by pathological narcissists. Which could be someone who has borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, or antisocial personality disorder, or is a sociopath, how they can try to create, which could be someone who has borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, or antisocial personality disorder, or is a sociopath, how they can try to create an external environment and internal mental environment to influence their victims to do what they want, behave in a manner that they want, to have emotions or lack of emotions, or to believe they have problems that either didn't exist or existed as only minor issues for the purpose of domination, power, and control. Now I want to shift this discussion and talk about how healthy individuals, not SLDs. SLDs are what we know as codependents, are unhealthy in a way that I have incredible sympathy for. In fact, I wrote my book, The Human Magnet Syndrome, about. But the difference between someone who's self-love deficient and someone who follows my treatment program or a program similar to it and transitions from self-love deficiency or self-love deficit disorder to what I call the cure, self-love abundance, is a tremendous life-changing difference, growth, evolution. And the purpose of this video is not to explain those concepts, which are explained in abundance in both my book and my educational seminars. I want to talk about how a person who is a recovering SLD in the process of becoming self-love abundant or is at self-love abundance. Incidentally, self-love abundance is not a description of a person that doesn't have any problems, that never struggles in relationships. No, that's unrealistic. That's a made-for-TV version. Self-love abundance is just a person that loves themselves so much so that they cannot be manipulated to hurt themselves, to sacrifice many elements of themselves, or people, places, and things they love to do or love. As a person who is working towards self-love abundance or is there, I'm telling you, and believe me, it is true, you can change the behavior of a pathological narcissist. But listen carefully, you cannot make them not pathologically narcissistic. It's impossible to change a personality disorder. As I explained in my 3-part series, The 50 Shades of Pathological Narcissism, a personality disorder is a permanent mental health condition that, for the most part, is resistive to any type of psychotherapy or medication. The person struggling with personality disorder is the problem. They don't have a problem like some of us have: anxiety, depression, ADD, PTSD. all of those problems or challenges are treatable. The person who has a personality disorder, like I said, is a disorder. It's who they are. It's their identity. It's their thinking. It's how they process information. It's how they access memories. It's how they rationalize what they do. It is about their lack of ethics or their twisted ethics and morals, and so much more. They are the disorder. Therefore, if you ask someone to change,
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Just stop it. Stop.
it's nearly impossible, just like if you ask me to change my personality. If a pathological narcissist does not have cognitive dissonance, and that means they can do whatever they want and not be subjected to guilt, shame, and not have that get in the way of fulfilling their needs. How then can you change a pathological narcissist? Well, you can't change their mental health. You cannot change their personality disorder. You cannot impact their rigid thought processes, their black and white manners in which they come to judgments, rationales, and how they determine their own morals. You can't change their selfish impulses, nor can you change their narcissistic injuries. You can't. And the sooner you realize that, the healthier you will be. And I have a slew of techniques that I developed to help victims of narcissistic abuse, SLDs, to manage narcissist harmful behavior and how to escape from it. But if you can't change the disorder, then how and why am I doing this video? Well, I'm going to talk about conditioning. And this is the connection that I had in the beginning of the video when I talked about how this is a follow-up to my previous video on conditioning and gaslighting. Conditioning is when you want to alter behavior through the delivery of a reward, a consequence, or the removal of a reward. If we think of classical conditioning, basic conditioning, we think of Pavlov and his dog. Pavlov conditioned his dog to salivate when the dog heard the bell ring. And how he did that was every time he would ring a bell, he would feed the dog. One day he rang the bell and didn't feed the dog, and it would salivate. And from that point on, every time the dog heard the bell, the dog would salivate. So we know that's the most simple example of conditioning. Another example of conditioning is you can have a severe dislike of butter. And it's traced back to when you were 10 years old and you didn't know it, you contracted a stomach flu. And you ate something that had butter in it, and you thought, or maybe your parents told you, that it was food poisoning. And the idea of eating butter again was associated with getting sick. If you eat butter, you get sick. It's conditioned. It's automatic. It's not that butter made that person sick, but it was a consequence that was related with the event. Conditioning can be a habit. It can be a fear. It can be an emotional response. It can be a lack of emotional response where you do something and in the case it's not helpful and you want to stop it. It's difficult because you unconsciously and consciously keep expecting to experience the consequence. Now, this is not my attempt to explain conditioning, because, oh my gosh, I can go on for hours. If you think of a dog does not have a sense of morals and ethics and empathy like humans have. You might have a sweet, loving dog, but they have limitations based upon their brain. And you feed that dog scraps from the dinner table. And you've been feeding that dog scraps from the dinner table its whole life. And one day you find out from the vet that your dog will get sick and potentially die if you don't stop feeding him human food. You listen to the doctor, you comply, and the dog doesn't like it. The dog has no conception or ability to understand why you're doing it. It just feels upset in a dog way that it's not getting what it always gets. And it will do anything within its capacity to try to manipulate you. And its most effective technique is just to bug you and to not stop. Well, according to what we know about behaviorism and behavior modification, the dog was conditioned that if it should look cute, if it should sit quietly, or somewhere in the beginning of that dog's life, it did something that engendered humans to feed it. And it became conditioned that if it goes to the table and somehow does what the humans like, the humans will want to feed it. So there is a conditioning. Go to the table, look cute, whimper, get fed. Whimper conditions the humans don't like the whimpering, they give the food to the dog. The dog is conditioned that if I sit quietly or look cute next to the dinner table, I will get fed. Behavior, expectation, reinforcement, conditioning. So if we are going to try to condition narcissists, which is far more difficult than a dog, we have to understand first that you are not changing the way they think. You are not going to change them in how they are in a relationship and how they believe or justify their actions, reactions, abuse, harm, etc. You are going to be taking away a pleasurable stimulus, something that feels good, something that makes them happy, satiated, relaxed, affirmed, something that confirms their entitlement and their grandiosity. And if you take that away, they are going to be upset and they are going to do what a dog does, and it will find a way to break you down so you can finally stop your silly boundary and give in and give them what they want. And then they get what they not only condition the person, but in how they've been conditioned, those play out and they get their equivalent of the table scraps. But what happens if you understand the personality disorder and you do not try to change something that is unchangeable? What happens if you subscribe to a lot of my concepts about how to escape and manage, how to escape narcissistic abuse and manage the narcissist trying to abuse you? What if you have applied my techniques such as observe, don't absorb, induced conversation, the 3-strike rule, and so many other techniques which I have outlined in the 3rd part of my 50 Shades of Narcissism video series? Finally, what happens if you understand conditioning and you are patient enough to ride the uncomfortable wave of resistance, rebellion, and fighting back, and you consistently apply observe, don't absorb, and you just stay in a non-reactive, in a non-emotionally reactive state, and you apply the boundary, which is you don't give the reinforcement. I call it the cookie. So the cookie or the reinforcement for the narcissist is for you to do what he or she wants. Say you're sorry, give them something that is pleasurable, allow them to do things that are disrespectful, and you don't give them what was once the reinforcement, and you pull that away and you ride out their discomfort. You don't get induced into a conversation. You don't absorb the toxicity of the argument, and you just observe them trying to do anything they can, just like the dog, to break you down. And when they find out they can't break you down, they will get tired. If you ever watch a dog who is being conditioned, I don't even know if that's a word, but in this example, the dog is not being fed table scraps, they will eventually get tired. And that period of time of begging and goes down from it starts a very long time of begging, and eventually through what we call the extinction response becomes less and less and less. But in the beginning, the dog, who's not nearly as smart as a human, knows that if he begs enough, he will break the human down, and he understands the basics of that psychology. And because of the nature of conditioning with regards to punishment, with regards to pulling away a positive stimulus, the dog will eventually break down the human, and they'll say, heck with it, here, take the food, take some food, go away. But if you are the human, the recovering SLD, a person who is deciding to break free from narcissistic abuse, but somehow has to interface with the narcissist, because ideally you should just get the heck out and do as little, or have to do as little as you can in a relationship with any narcissist that is harmful, hurtful, manipulative. Then you ride the storm out, and eventually every time the narcissist asks for the cookie, there will be less time that they are hounding you. That's a little bit poetic. They are manipulating you, doing what they know works, which is why being involved in my 11-stage self-love recovery treatment program, otherwise known as Codependency Cure, is important, because I actually have stage 6 that actually teaches people about everything I'm talking about and prepares them for setting boundaries, so that when they do set the boundaries, they're successful. But I digress. So because of the extinction response, eventually the narcissist will not be getting the cookie. The cookie is both what he or she wants: permission to see the kids, sex, affirmation, money, and he's also not getting another cookie. And this is important. And the cookie is the satisfaction of manipulating the SLD, the person who he wants the cookie from. If that person doesn't get mad, he is deprived of satisfaction. And because humans are far different from dogs, the narcissist not only wants the cookie, he wants to manipulate and harm the person who's going to give him a cookie if she or he doesn't comply. And that is a very strong reinforcement. Sometimes that cookie tastes even better than the cookie of complying with what he wants. Is the idea of hurting someone, punishing someone, gaslighting someone, entrapping someone. That is a very high level reinforcement, or positive, for the narcissist. So if you take away that reinforcement, that cookie, and the cookie of getting what he or she wants, the narcissist will eventually get tired of his or her version of begging and stop. And then over time, according to the extinction response, that will become less and less and less. I know from personal experience while married to a narcissist that it works. I know from personal experience being a a master's level psychotherapist with 35 years experience that conditioning, behavioral modification is an important element of the psychological mental health psychotherapy sciences. It works, but you have to have limited expectations. And if your expectation is to break a habit or to stop someone from doing something that is harmful or annoying or embarrassing, it can work. But if you expect them to have empathy and insight about the process, you are gravely mistaken, and you are exhibiting what I call is a typical SLDD delusion or codependency delusion of trying to control someone who simply cannot be. So let me break this down on what it looks like with a pathological narcissist and a person who is recovering from self-love deficit disorder, who is using this information and the techniques that I've taught them to support it. The narcissist wants extended visitation with the kids when there is a very clear delineation in the divorce agreement that he should get, or she, we'll just say he for now, should get only 2 days, but he wants 3 days. And what he doesn't know is his wife, ex-wife, is in therapy with me, or someone who is teaching them or helping them with the same type of methods and psychotherapy approach, that he can't get under their skin. He cannot manipulate them. He cannot gaslight them. And so he will do what he always does in order to get the cookie, which is the extra time. And if that person, his former victim, observes and doesn't absorb, understands the power of induced conversation, practices my 3-strike boundary rule and the plethora of other techniques that I teach, will all of a sudden realize that there is more of a consequence of continuing than the possibility of getting something positive. So now his behavior is being shaped by the absence of the positive. You are now taking away positive reinforcement. You are now taking away what drives him in his pursuit, which is to get what he or she wants. But now you are introducing a negative consequence or a consequence. Should he continue to ask, not only will he not get his cookie, but he might face what we call an adverse stimulus or a consequence. And that could be the phone being hung up. That could be the ex-spouse contacting her attorney. Or that could be just his narcissistic feelings getting hurt and experiencing a very painful and drawn-out narcissistic injury. So if you understand the concept of conditioning, and I just introduced a very basic form of that, and you understand the parameters of a personality disorder, and you have reasonable expectations, and you want to impact a narcissist's harmful behavior, harmful treatment of you, and it makes sense, because there are many situations that you should not even consider anything about this video. You should just stay away from the narcissist and know that any attempt to try to condition them is only staying in what I call the wrestling ring, which is based upon George Bernard Shaw saying, don't wrestle with the pig, you'll get dirty, and besides, he likes it. So in conclusion, it is possible to condition a narcissist to change their behaviors that will relieve some level of relationship dysfunction, personal frustration. And you can have positive outcomes if you are realistic in your expectations. And this is where expectation management is so important. So I hope this information helped you. And should you want more information about this and other elements of my work, I have 15 full-length seminar educational videos or in audio form available that go far beyond what I talk about in my YouTube videos at selfloverecovery.com. I also provide psychotherapy and have openings. And my company, Self Love Recovery Institute, is getting back to what was once a very successful weekend intensive self-love recovery retreat. It's Never Too Late to Be the Person You Should Have Been by Ross Rosenberg. Go to the mirror now. Look courageously deep within yourself. There's a little you, the child you used to be, frozen inside of you. She or he disappeared a long time ago because the harm they suffered was simply unendurable. To be released from the shackles of self-love deficit disorder, you have to explore the darkest and most hidden regions of your life. Finding this child is equivalent to discovering yourself. You will have to dig deep and summon every ounce of courage and strength you have that until this moment you were convinced you didn't. The decision is yours. Remain in your predictable but perpetually dysfunctional life, or take the frightening road less traveled. This journey is the only way to reunite with your lost innocence and birthright for joyful self-love. We're having one in September, and we will have one every 3 months afterwards. So check us out, selfloverecovery.com. Email us at help@selfloverecovery.com or subscribe. All right, be well, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.